50 days is what we'd likely have based off of the setup that you see in the background right here, which is going to be the focus of today's video, as well as, of course, Jackson Hole, which is the big event of this week, which you got the big Fed chair, Jay Powell, speaking once again, which markets typically will move on. Feels kind of like this whole week has been more or less kind of waiting around for that event. And I suspect that that will be, the main driver for what we do see over the next couple of weeks here, kind of leading into the more important portion, which is still going to be the mid to likely latter part of September. Anyways, all of this is really a setup for that, but there are some really compelling things in the background that are starting to formulate at, in my opinion, the most important time. So let's just jump right into it, starting off with that setup. This is a 5-day setup. We've actually spoken about this before. This is going to be in combination with the daily and the 12-hour setup that we did see fire off a couple days ago. That is still very much active, but in this case, we do see that the 5-day, 5 exponential moving average setup has officially fired off right here. A very simple setup, basically just waiting for price action to close above that red 5 exponential moving average, and then close that position when price closes below that red 5 exponential moving average. Now, we did see the last one of this setup fail. This was back on over in middle of July, but we have another one staring us right in the face, which fired off as fresh as last night's 5-day closure. And if you're unfamiliar with the results of this thing long term, I am running a back test here from 2015 to current date. I'll actually show you a full history back test as well and explain why I'm actually not using that right now. But you can see that this has a slightly over 40% strike rate over the past, 8 years? 5 plus 4, 9 years, actually. 9 years. Jesus, man, that's a long time. With a profit factor of over 4.25. In fact, if we go to the performance summary, we can see that the average winning trade has returned over 36%, and the average losing trade losing an average of about 5.75%. So, when you have a setup like that, at least in my opinion, in my experience, I want to run that as many fucking times as I possibly can because, again, this is a very, 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 very favorable distribution between, your winning trades versus your, versus your average losing trades. And again, with the strike rate of just over 40%, it is more likely to fail on a case-by-case basis, but the last one did fail, and perhaps this would be the turning point, especially with today's event looming overhead, if you will. So, the setup is there. It's not guaranteed, obviously, to work out. Like I said, the last one that we saw over here did produce a loss. In this case, it was, let me actually see how much on a percentage basis. It was about a little under 4.5% in terms of price action loss right there. So again, keeping the losses relatively minimum compared to what the gains are. And this one has pretty much, one of the beautiful things about this setup is that it just keeps you in these trades for a long time. If you're wondering how I'm backtesting this and using all these tools, it is this one right here, the Krown Quant Automation Service. I'm going to be having a nice sale going on soon during the first week of September because it's actually going to be my birthday. So if you're interested in that, just wait about a week now, and you might even get a bit of a discount. All right, sweet. So let's actually see what that would look like in terms of price action. If this one does fail, well, you'll know that it fails when we see the next 5-day closure, which isn't happening for another 4.5 days below 60,500. Again, average loss, we do expect somewhere around about 6%, which would put Bitcoin basically back down about $57,000. I think that, if you do see Bitcoin even back below $60,000, you're probably going to see this one fail. You could probably front run that in terms of what's likely to be spawned upon from today's event. And of course, the upside, 36% to the upside, on average, that would be a tremendous move. Obviously putting Bitcoin on actually new highs here in the low 80s. And if we go throughout the history of this, not throughout the history of this, but just the amount of average bars that it takes to play out in the winning trades, which you actually can't see here, but I can see it's 10 bars versus the average amount of bars in losing trades, which is 2 bars. We would expect this to take 50 days basically from last night. So that puts us into where, let me just see. In terms of time, 50 days, where are we going to be at? Actually, early October. So yeah, still, no matter which way I cut this, I still think that we are generally still going to be in a boring sideways range, the same range that we've seen for the last 4 or 5 months now, until at least like mid-September. But these are averages, so we do expect some variance around that. Like I said, I will show you the full results for the full history of Bitcoin, but I just want to say at the outset of it, oh shit, I realized that you can't see specifically right there. But I do want to say at the outset of it, the problem with looking at the full results for the history of Bitcoin is that the early results are just, they're astronomical right here. We can see that the percent profitable rate goes down a little bit. Profit factor goes up significantly. This is, the early trades were returning so much percentage wise that the average winning trade is over 100%. So, I don't think that's what's happening here. That's why I did specifically choose that date range from 2015 to current date. Still getting a decent sample size for a time frame like this, but overall, the equity curve continues up and to the right, and that's what we're most interested in. So that is there. Anyways, we'll continue to follow up on this one as we get new 5-day closures, obviously, and from there we can go into some daily analysis. We can see that Friday has been weighted towards actually negative closures since 2024 began. As always, we're most interested in the average win versus average loss in terms of those gains, but let's see. On the basically on both sides, Friday either on average gains about almost 2.5%, or on average loses about 2.25% for the negative closing days. Let's see what that would look like in terms of price action. About 2.5% to the upside puts Bitcoin back around $62,000. Still, that doesn't actually fulfill what we're looking for from price to actually confirm this as the next major high or low, which still needs to be a daily closure above about $62,500, or just anywhere above Thursday, the 8th of August high. None of this information has changed for it seems like weeks now, but that is still there. And then, of course, to the downside, if Bitcoin were to fail today, probably catalyzed by the event later on, 2.25% to the downside would put Bitcoin back down around yesterday's open at $59,000 even. So likely the range for today. Then again, if Bitcoin does break out above $62,500, we very likely do see this one run a little bit. From there, I do want to bring you into stochastic momentum for the weekly here, as we're going to see the weekly close for CME. As of right now, the weekly stochastic oscillator is still positioned to the upside. However, if Bitcoin does fail to close above, very specifically today, 62,350, it will turn down. So, if you are bullish, or at least if you're looking for the bullish route to play out, we kind of actually do expect Bitcoin to likely close above that pivot today. That would also very likely fulfill the $62,500 number as well that we spoke about earlier for just like a structural breakout. But those things likely work hand in hand. So if you do see Bitcoin above that pivot, just another very strong signal that we do see this one breakout, kind of starting today. And we'd expect it to run into next week and probably moves into the $66,000, $67,000 region. But for right now, it is still below. So it's a long day left to go. Anyways, daily time frame for CME continues with upside momentum as long as Bitcoin's above 58,600. So not bad right there. And I suppose we'll just have to wait and see where things close out at the end of today. To see kind of how that affects next week. Obviously, CME doesn't trade over the weekend, so nothing to really look at there. Anyways, from here, I want to go over to the HPDR on the weekly as well for CME. Just wanted to highlight this as well. Bitcoin is actually still above the median. In fact, this week it has essentially found the low of the week. We are seeing not daily, but weekly HPDRO cross over into positive territory for the first time since actually the the failed attempt, I should say, in June, where Bitcoin tried for new highs, did not make new highs. So in this case, is this going to be a legitimate one? We do see that volatility is actually rising from some of the lowest levels. So I suppose it does have a chance. It's actually funny because at the beginning of this week, one of the members in the Discord pointed this one out to me, and I'm like, that's usually actually a bearish signal. But I'm going to be wrong on this, or I'm very likely to be wrong on this one with 13 hours left to go, or almost 14 hours left to go. But again, assuming that Bitcoin just remains above the median, this is going to generally bode well for the boo laws here. Again, long day left to go, but but so far so good in that regard. Anyways, other than that, I wanted to also address traditional markets, just kind of continue to follow up on this one. Actually, let's go back to this chart for this. Yeah. I do want to highlight both NASDAQ futures and SPY futures. Wait, wrong chart again. Here we go. NASDAQ futures, very interesting to me, as is SPY futures. We can see the weekly stochastic momentum pivot is just above $20,000. NASDAQ did hit above there yesterday, has thus far rejected, but again, the catalyst will really be today's event. So it really matters where the closures are rather than, the intra-week price. But just keep your eyes on that number. If NAS closes above there, it's going to be a pretty damn good signal that we do see likely a retest of prior all-time highs, I guess, in September. Sounds kind of fucking crazy, but it is what it is. SPY futures a little bit stronger compared to NASDAQ, actually. We do see it will actually turn up above 56.20, which is now trading $7 below. Again, nothing really matters until today's event passes because, a lot of price action will likely be catalyzed by that. But, if you do see SPY above 56.20, another good indication that this one very likely retests all-time highs, maybe even all, in August, but very likely in September, both boding well for Bitcoin, as Bitcoin is playing as a, relatively weak compared to traditional markets. It is a laggard, which is, it is what it is. Anyways, I think that's probably a good place for me to be leaving off on this video. Again, keep your eyes on those numbers. This setup over here is valid as long as Bitcoin is still above that 5-day 5 exponential. Just super simple setup right here. I am actually playing this one as well, or I shouldn't say that I'm playing it, but my bot is, my little slave bot is playing it in the backgrounds. So we'll end on that note. As always, we'll play. I want to send you a nice positive message from our very natural laughing man over here, quite jacked as well.
I'm hoping y'all are having another really wonderful day.
Take care.